Good morning, what's up, T-Tam fam? Eric here for episode 23 on Sunday, December 14th, 2025. Only a few more weeks till the fat man comes, gives you guys presents. and basically 3 weeks to the end of 2025 and the start of 2026. It's crazy. This year has been a roller coaster, to say the least. Um, so on my last episode, I spoke about emotional dyslexia. I'm going to get into that in this episode as well, but I'm going to be more focused on how the attachment awareness changed everything for me. Truthfully, once I learned about it, and it's something that I hope you enjoy this episode, and let's get into it because ultimately it's the day the relationship finally made sense. And here we go. There's a moment in healing when the entire story shifts. Not because the relationship changed, but because you finally understood what was actually happening underneath it. For the longest time, I thought her distance meant I wasn't enough, which is true. I'd never dealt with that before. I thought her shutdowns were punishment. I thought the mixed signals were intentional. But then I learned about her attachment. And everything I thought I knew about the relationship flipped. This episode, again, is about the moment attachment awareness changed everything for me. So, just kind of as a background, with the relationship, hopefully I don't sound too redundant here in this episode, but I know we've touched on a lot of things, but this is primarily, focusing on the why, for me. And, before that, realistically, like the first year of our relationship, everything was good. You know what I mean? Like, everything I thought got resolved. If a situation came up, we spoke about it clearly, concisely. Um, but, you know, as then when the attachment really took hold, that's when, major changes arose. So before that, it was confusion, right? Because I didn't know anything about the attachment styles. The relationship, was a roller coaster after the first year. Um, when she first broke her mask, that's when, things were, peaks and valleys, hot and cold, however you wanna however you wanna do it. One week she was warm, connected and present, the next pulled away. You know, one day she wanted closeness, the next she needed distance. We'd build momentum, then she would retreat. Now this is kind of key. Like this is one of the patterns that I noticed. When it came to doing stuff with me or with my family. Um, and it's kind of wild because how much it makes sense now. But in the beginning, I blamed myself for every shift because I was doing everything within my power to make sure that she was satisfied, you know, um, and make sure that she was happy. And I thought that, I was doing right, and we'll get more into it. When she got quiet, I'd assume I had done something wrong. When she withdrew, that just forced me to try harder to prove myself. Even though I'd already proved myself, but it was continuing. Like it was like, oh, guess what? You messed up, so now you have to make amends for it. That was my mentality. When she shut down, I tried to fix it. That's just how I am by nature. I'm a nurturer and a fixer. When she would disappear emotionally, I chased, and I chased because I didn't know how to accept that. Because I kept trying to solve a problem I couldn't see. And then, you know, during our June breakup, I came across a video. And it was about attachment styles. Secure, anxious, avoidant, fearful, avoidant, dismissive. Kind of, learning about that. And I was literally listening to this video, and I sent it to her when we were on socials. um, and I said, hey, you know what? Like, this, correct me if I'm wrong. I said, does this sound like us? Because when I watched that video, I was picturing me and I was picturing her. And just literally word for word, as far as what was going on, it literally was us. Well, that's where she kind of, that's where she first said that she was leaning towards the fearful avoidance side. And there was a test that you could take, and we both took the test, and oddly enough, we both were fearful avoidance. I consider myself more, at that time, an anxious avoidant because of how I was, really handling things. But when she had said that, that's when, like, the ball started rolling. Okay, what is fearful avoidance, right? And, I had to do some digging, and I've done a lot of digging since then. And finally, unfortunately, like, really after the breakup, um, like, it became really clear. Um, and I understood why she wanted closeness, but then panicked. Why emotional intimacy triggered her. Triggered her fear. Why she shut down during vulnerability. That's a big one, because I was an open book. Um, and with her, she was always, I'll let you know, I'll let you know, I'll let you know. And I didn't push it because I respected what she was saying. Like, she was my girlfriend. Like, if I'm not gonna sit there and try and force something out of her just because I needed to get an answer. No, because at that point in time, I literally was under the mindset, like, hey, we're gonna be together forever. So eventually she will come out and she will talk about, her past, her past traumas, and we can see where some of this lies, right? So, I understood why she pulled back when things were good, because that scared that, I don't want to say scared, that terrified her, because that's something she always wanted, but it ultimately was one of her bigger fears. Why she confused connection with danger. She had never been, at least I don't think. Now, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but toot toot, just kidding. um, but no, I think I was her safest partner, safest relationship that she had ever had, and she had no clue on how to receive that because she was so used to chaos. And why she didn't trust stability, because she had been burned, in previous relationships or childhood, or, whatever the case may have been. I realized she wasn't random. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't manipulating me. She was a fearful avoidant, wanting love, but fearing the cost of love. Here's another thing that I've learned is the knowledge didn't excuse the pain, but it finally explained it. And that to me was a very big breakthrough of, seeing how she would act, and when I had things lined up and what we would talk about, and she was all in, and then she would pull back, and then it was just like, well, what the hell is going on? And that's why I came up with, the emotional dyslexia aspect, because it was just ass fucking backwards, to me, right? This was to me, because here I am thinking I'm not gonna, like, I was questioning everything about me, but also understanding that I was doing the right thing 100%. So, so now let's dive into the fearful avoidant, cycle and fear, right? Because they live in a paradox. And this was, this even to today, it's still one of the craziest things, is she wanted me close, but closeness scares me. I feel safe with you, but my fear won't let me receive that safety. You know, the one thing that I did learn is that everything she told me was true. Her feelings and her wanting to, um, integrate our families and wanting to get married. And, she wanted all of this stuff because she loves deeply. But her nervous system, when the love became real, created panic. And, their nervous system says, oh, this is good, but this could hurt me. So I need to pull away before I'm fully seen. When I learned about the FAs and, the nervous system on how it's wired, I've said it previously in videos, she was wired for survival, not connection. So therefore, once I finally, once I understood that, that theme nearly explained every point of conflict we had. A lot of it was, was a projection of what she was actually feeling towards me. So now I'm going to kind of get into, the emotional dyslexia in the attachment portion of, our relationship. And, when those two collide, their words don't match their actions, their feelings don't match their behavior. Their emotional truth changes with fear, and their story shifts based on whatever sort of mental state that they're in. Essentially using the term moving the goalposts. I was constantly, trying to kick a field goal, but goalposts would be directly in front of me. When I was getting ready to kick, they get moved to the left, they get moved to the right. So, it was, it made it very difficult for me to pinpoint kind of everything on how I was going to do. And, with that, it, left me confused, rejected, blamed, abandoned, and at times unworthy. But even though, like, I thought those, I didn't feel those. And that's one thing that I've kind of learned through my growth here is that, like, I know when I'm doing something wrong or I've done something wrong because I get this pit and I get this feeling about me. They're like, yo, you done fucked up. And honestly, as I had gone through this and learned more about it, is I didn't. Was I 100% perfect? No, not at all. And I'm not trying to make myself out to be the Messiah because I'm not. No, I'm not perfect. And I never claimed to be. But yes, I took accountability for everything that made her, upset or made her unsafe, right? Because there were times that, came up and it's just like, okay, you know what? I understand that. I get what, how that impacted you and why you felt that way. But the one thing with this is that it was past traumas that were brought into today's relationship. So I had no clue on how to fight that because here I am, previously talking about, if like I had messed up or I'd said something or whatnot and we had discussed it, to me it was resolved. Boom, done, closed, moving on. No. I was facing years of trauma that she had experienced. And that made it extremely difficult. It was a no-win situation for me. But the one thing attachment awareness showed me something is she wasn't breaking love. She was breaking under the weight of what love triggered inside of her. So now we kind of, now I'm moving into the moment that the pattern finally made sense to me. And this was post breakup, even though I had been, doing a lot of research about FAs and myself because like she asked me to grow, all right? And I took that to heart, and I have been growing since June. I have taken full inventory and accountability of myself and my actions and my words, um, to make sure that I was, doing the right thing. And it wasn't until after the fact when the dust settled, so to speak, and everything just kind of, clicked. It made sense. It became clear. You know, the moment the attachment rewrote the entire relationship. I'll give you an example. We had just spent some time together where everything felt right. She was warm, she was open, talkative, affectionate. The kind of moments that made me believe we were building something real, which it was. Like, I cherished those moments. Like, that to me, there was nothing better to see, with her, being happy and comfortable and at peace and just enjoying life, especially with that smile. Being able to look into her eyes and see true happiness, you know. So that's how I know this relationship was real. But then overnight, she flipped, and it wasn't, it was something that gone, like immediate, like as soon as something hit that trigger, bang, the guillotine came down, lopped it off, and, from there, her tone changed, her warmth went bye-bye, see ya, and then all of a sudden the walls went up, she became guarded, distant, and very quiet. And I would ask if she was okay. Um, and I would get, some responses of, you know, I need space. Okay, to give you space. There was a particular time when I knew something was wrong, but we had our kids together and to drop mine off, and I was planning on calling her. As soon as I dropped off my daughter, I'd gotten a text from her being like, listen, I'm not, we're not going to hang out tonight. Something is off. I need space. And I'm like, okay. Didn't know how to take that. And that really kind of sent me for a loop. Um, basically it was everything that we had worked towards got wiped out. And that's when the start of, the resets, quote unquote, began. But, before I knew about attachment styles and whatnot, I thought I must have done something wrong, or I definitely did do something wrong. Maybe she's losing interest. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe she didn't feel the same way that I did. Maybe I had misread everything. And those were thoughts that kind of, went through my head and whatnot. But I would ask her, I was very open to being like, hey, are we good? Constant check-ins and making sure that we were fine. And the answers that I got were good. So it was, it was very hard for me to accept when she needed that space because I had never dealt with that. But again, I respected it simply because, that's something she had asked for. But then, once I learned about the FA and the patterns, clicked. Now it made fucking perfect sense. She got too close, and the closeness scared her. If she opened up and then panicked about being exposed, she felt emotionally safe one day and then feared losing that safety. She enjoyed the connection, but feared the dependence. Her retreat wasn't rejection, it was self-protection. And that's what she always went back to. It was, she's hyper-vigilant, very independent. And she always went back to self-protection because she was scanning for threats every single day, 24/7. And that's one thing that ran through her. And, I knew she would always be watching. I told her that. I said, listen, you're always going to be watching. I know this. But the more information that I found was just mind blowing because it did not stop. It does not stop for them. Not at all. And that's why they become emotionally fatigued. Um, but, you know, understanding that that last moment wasn't about me, it was about her attachment wound being triggered. And, knowing that changed the entire narrative I'd been carrying. Because here I am thinking it was me, it was me, it was me, when in fact it wasn't. It was all I was fighting her past, and every single day, and I was trying to take on battles that I had no visibility on. So it was lose lose no matter what I did. You know, and why? And here's like kind of the big thing that I learned about this is when it comes to attachment awareness. I've gained a lot more self-respect, a lot more self-worth, and understanding that I'm at an age right now where it's I'm willing to work with anybody, right? And but if you're not going to be honest with yourself, honest with me, I can't help you. Like the thing is about this is that once you know what you're up against, now you can formulate a game plan. Well, in this case, I stopped taking her behavior personally because it was something she was doing subconsciously to a point. Um, because I saw the wound, the confusion disappeared. Um, and I was seeing the cycle that she was going through, which happened to be every couple of months, or every time I had something set up, bang, she would go hide for a few days. You know, um, I realized what would have worked, would have been. Wow, I can't even talk. I realized what would have been required to make it work, and I was for that. I was here for her support if she needed it, um, knowing that I couldn't fix her. She can only fix her, but I was there for support if she wanted it. Going back, talking about my worth, that was big because in relationships I've realized that I've always just put everything that I had into it and abandoning myself. Did it in my marriage. Um, and I did it in this relationship to a point. Um, and that's something where I can't deny myself anymore. I have to, you can't, trying to survive in an unstable dynamic is no good. So you have to make sure that you have to create that stability for yourself. Um, the one thing is she'd sent me a video about, love not being enough. And it's true. It absolutely is true. Now, this talked about, you know, presence, follow through, consistency, all of that, you know. And in my case at the time, and that's when I learned a lot about, those three things. And it's a constant tag that I put in every single video because it matters. But when I say love isn't enough, in this aspect, is attachment wounds overpower love when they're not healed. And to me, is if you're not healed, you cannot be in a relationship. You cannot give yourself to another person fully. You cannot receive what that person is going to give them. And that right there, that just made everything. That made everything. And one of the bigger truths is attachment awareness didn't just explain the past. It closed the door on the future because she wasn't healed. You know, I can love her till the cows come home. I can understand her trauma. I can care about her growth. But I can't go back into a pattern that I've outgrown. And that's really what I've been doing for the past 6 weeks since the breakup, is outgrowing that pattern and submersing myself to understand this attachment style, and knowing that going forward that I now have purpose, I now have boundaries, I now have the power back in me to effectively make a decision as I go through the dating world when I'm ready. And that to me has been enlightening. That to me has given me that power because I understand my self-worth. I understand my discipline that I'm putting into. I understand my 3 phases of physical, emotional, and spiritual. And I'm getting more with the spiritual, like honestly. You know, I've put it in God's hands, and He is going to direct me to the right path. And I'm just taking each day as it comes, you know, getting through each day, and, you know, making sure that I'm doing the best for myself right now, because that is key. Making sure that I'm getting plenty of sleep, getting food, getting to the gym, you know, getting that, you know, having a rough day, barbell therapy. I mean, you cannot beat it, honestly. It's, to me, it's priceless. It's fucking priceless. So, I mean, that's more on the fearful avoidant. Now, there's obviously other attachments that are out there, but this is what, you know, I've dealt with, you know, for the last, you know, 6 months of our relationship. And it answered so many questions, honestly. And, you know, I'm somebody that, you know, likes to learn about things and fully understand it. So for me, it's been, you know, taking a lot of information with a grain of salt and seeing how it all matches up, seeing what similarities are there. And yeah, it's really kind of been a very enlightening time. So I'm going to close with this. When you finally understand someone's attachment pattern, you stop blaming yourself for the way that they loved you. You realize that 1, it wasn't your fault. 2, their withdrawal wasn't punishment. 3, their inconsistency wasn't your future. 4, their distance wasn't your flaw. 5, biggest, their shutdowns weren't about you at all. I can say that one again. Their shutdowns were not about you at all. Right? You may have triggered it because you had said something. But again, you have to realize that you're talking about years and years and years and years and years of trauma, going back to childhood potentially, up until current day, of experiences that cause them to be who they are. Attachment didn't change the relationship. It changed my understanding of our relationship. Once you understand the truth, you can love someone. But, always a but, isn't it? But you can never go back to the version of yourself who accepted the cycle. Because through everything, through every trial, through every tribulation that we go through is, you are going to experience things. And the one thing that you can do is learn from it and grow from it. Learn what not to accept and put firm boundaries in play that you have to follow. Why? Because you have to protect yourself. Because at the end of the day, there's only you. With that being said, today we got my family's Christmas party. Busy day. Busy day. I'm actually not going to church today because we have the family Christmas party, so it's gonna fall into it. But I am making the mac and cheese, so I'm gonna get off here and then get ready for the gym. And then when I get home, I'm gonna make the mac and cheese, shower, and then head up for a fun Christmas party at my cousin's house, who's so gracious to host it. And I'm looking forward to it because it's a good time. It's kind of the start of a reset. End of year kind of bash. Get to see my cousins and their kids and all of that. So it's definitely it's because my family's not close. We see my mother's side of the family once a year at this party, pretty much. And it is good. It is fun. It brings everybody together. People are laughing. People are crying. Because it's an emotional time. We're getting to the age where my aunts and uncles they're up there in age. So could this be their last Christmas? Who knows, right? You never know. But we make the best of it. So with that said, make sure you do some physical activity today. Whether it's getting up, whether first get out of bed, second go for a walk, go to the gym, get some good food in you, enjoy the day. It's always a great day when you wake up this side of the sand. Till next week.